I'm actually out at a tavern because the Wi-Fi is still out at my house. But
Oh, what a drag.
yeah, I'm definitely loving this weather.
Is it the heat that's doing it to y'all, or is it water or wind or what?
Just thunderstorms every night.
Oh God.
The best part of fall.
Yeah, right.
Well, anyway, I wanted to thank you for talking with me. I know not everyone is interested in having everything recorded for posterity and whatnot, but
Well, I'm extremely flattered that you did, and thank you for asking.
so why don't we start off with tell me a bit about how you got into radical feminism.
Well, I grew up a feminist. My mother always had Ms. Magazine in the house, and I saw Gloria Steinem speak at Chautauqua when I was probably like 15 years old. That was pretty cool. But I turned into a shit leb femme for a little while. One of the faux femmes, I guess. And I thought things that were not in aligned with radical feminist philosophy. And eventually, I ran across some blogs, including a gal named Feminade. Do you remember her?
I
Fact
do.
checking. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I disagree with where she's gone lately. I don't want to get into that, but her early writings were like amazing to me, and I felt like a light went on over my head. And of course, reading Dworkin, that helped too. And then I found Mary Daly, and then I was a lost cause, and had to become a suffragist. So I guess that's my long and winding road.
It feels like a lot of people found their way through Tumblr or other online spaces, which is really interesting.
Oh God, I'm so old. We didn't even have internet until I was out of college. I remember coming into work. I was in my young 20s and telling the people at work, listen, I'm talking to people in China. This internet thing is going to be huge. This is the coolest thing ever. And they were like, what? I mean, that's how old I am. We had no computer, maybe a little bit in college, the computers existed, but not any kind of internet at all. So yeah, I'm eternally grateful for that. I'm grateful for no cell phones and social media when I was growing up. I mean, I feel for y'all because that's hard.
That's one thing that I've really noticed is that, I mean, there's obviously benefits to the internet. I do appreciate being able to meet with people who I'd never otherwise be able to get in contact with. But we also lost a lot of in real life spaces, a lot of interconnectivity in our own communities.
We've lost everything. I mean, when it comes down to it, we've lost everything. We have no lesbian bars. We don't even have Mishfest anymore. Yeah, we've lost everything.
That's something that I've heard a lot with some of the people I've talked to recently is just there are no lesbian bars, there's no book clubs,
Yeah.
there's no dykes on bikes. That's the thing that I'm really hung up on is that like I got my motorcycle license in my motorcycle and I was like, yes,
Oh.
I can join like a gang, like a motorcycle gang, and that's not true. They all disappeared.
Yeah. And even if you wanted to, you wouldn't be allowed to have it, right? Because the males in justice don't like it. They don't approve. So,
They'd call it
yeah,
exclusionary.
exactly. It's exclusionary. Well, guess what, boys? Yeah. So it's a sad state of affairs, but I like to think that it's darkest before the dawn. And I really truly think that when normal, quote unquote, people start to get a load of what they're doing to young girls, chucking them up like they are, and sterilizing all their boys, I think there's going to be another backlash. And I think
My
it's going to turn real
concern
far.
though is that that backlash is not going to be just at the trans movement. It's going to end up
Oh, yeah,
being at everything. It's going to be at anything that's not heteronormative. And because
absolutely.
when you look at it, like my dad's a conservative, he's the exact opposite of me. He paints everyone with the same broad brush. Like I'm trying to
Hmm.
explain that like I just want to live my life and get married to a woman and have a family. I want to be normal just with a woman. And he sees it as you're all the degenerates. You're all complacent and doing these things, and that's not true.
Yeah, and same with my wife and I. It's not even that we're very much pro marriage, but we are old and we do need, the benefits and the survivor benefits and all of that that comes along with growing older. So we got married. We'd have rather had civil marriages and not get involved, or civil unions and not even get involved in that whole marriage thing, but they forced it, so we did. And that's why we're out here. It's one of the reasons we do the channel that we do. Look, we're just two boring old lesbians trying to raise some chickens and do some gardening here. We're not coming for your kids. And I think it's so important. And, it's going to fail. Every backlash sweeps everything up in it. I mean, this is how we lost feminism the last time. And what we have now is nothing. It's not feminism. But, yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, and we are all going to suffer. And of course, as always, the young will suffer more than we will. We know that. But yeah, I'm afraid we're going to lose it. I'm afraid we're going to lose marriage. Maybe find somebody and marry them now, and then they won't be able to undo your. Which is not, it's a single. I always say take care of yourself first, but for realistically, like, you gotta look after yourselves, girls, because yeah, yeah,
It's funny because I actually had a friend who suggested the same thing after they overturned Roe v. Wade. She's like, "What if we just get married, just in
yeah,
case they take it away? We could just already have it."
yep. It's not a bad idea, and I'm not even joking. I mean, I just see it coming down the pike. They're emboldened now because they got Roe, and they're not going to stop until we're back in bonnets.
It's one of those things that's like, what I remember about The Handmaid's Tale was like the specific scene that was like she wasn't sure when exactly it all changed. It happened in steps, like it's not something
Yeah,
that you don't know when the world ends because it doesn't happen all at once. It happens
that's right.
slowly. And then,
Mm-hmm.
with Roe v. Wade, like we had the protests for like maybe 2 weeks, 2 weeks of protests. That's it.
Yes,
And then we went back to our
yes.
lives because what are you going to do? The protests don't actually change anything.
No, they don't. If they did, they wouldn't let you do it. You know.
It's
Yeah,
all so
yeah,
performative, and you're making a big fuss, and then you have to go back to work and you have to go on and move on because we can't actually change any of this stuff. We're just stuck dealing with it.
yeah. And I hope that our het sisters are out here noticing the silence of our friends, their friends, the males that they are attached to. How many women do you see speaking out about Roe, about the trans cult, about all of these issues? Where are their men? Why didn't the entire country shut down after Roe was taken away? Because the males like it that way. And you cannot, not my Nigel, not all men, all you want. But the truth of it is, not one of them laid down for you and put themselves under the wheels for you. Not one. And you're still going to sleep with them? And they're endangering, knowing that a man is endangering your life, not just your future, but your life. And you're still going to sleep with them. It boggles my mind at this point after this.
It's funny, it's been the same arguments for forever. There's a bookstore in Atlanta, Vintage Atlanta Books, and they had some basically some fanzine type writings from lesbians who were in like Emory and GSU in the 80s and 90s, and they had the same arguments about about feminism. These are feminist writings of, well, why not be separatist? Why not separate from your men? Even if you do find a guy who's a good guy, everyone thinks their guy is the exception.
Right. So many exceptions. It's amazing that they can't go one day without raping us, as Andrea would say. It's just amazing that everyone seems to be with their exceptional male.
And it's like that speech by Dworkin. I
Yeah.
want a
Truce
24
during
hour
which
truce on.
original rape. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They've never been able to do it. How many decades ago did she ask us this question? How many decades ago did she, and they've never been able to do it. Not once. Not one day. Yeah, but you know, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is for hot women. I really don't. I wish them well, and I wish them health, but I think if they
I
all stopped, as I've said before, patriarchy would stop tomorrow. If you just stopped and left them. I think the women in Iceland did this in like 24 hours, right? They did
Yeah,
this a
they
couple
had
of times.
a truce, and they all
Hmm.
didn't do anything for like 24
Hmm.
hours, and then they immediately got the rights they asked for because they had class consciousness to work together. That's one thing that we really don't have anymore, is the ability to look at other women and say we have this in common. We have this universal female experience and we can work together towards a common goal. We don't have that class consciousness anymore to be able to look at other women and see them as women. Instead, we're breaking down identities into these hyper individualist labels so everyone
Yeah.
feels super special and different,
Mhm.
and we have
Mhm.
nothing in common.
Mhm. Maybe Andrea asked the wrong question. Maybe it should have been the wrong request. Maybe it should have been, I want a 24-hour truth string, which there is no pet sex initiated by women. You know, can we do it for a day? Can we do it for a day, girls? Can we pull together for one day? I don't know. Yeah, we're missing that class consciousness so much, and I know it's like I say, it's hard. I don't understand how to live like that in this current climate, and I wish them all well. I don't know what advice to even give them though. Just go
No,
find
I
some
do think
nice
that there
guy and get help.
is. I do think that I know that's easier as a lesbian to be like, just like, I don't have a use for a guy in my life. I have maybe one male friend and we don't talk very often. If I had to cut out all men in my life, nothing would suffer or change. And I get that
Right.
het women have a different experience and that they like men. I don't understand why, but they like them. um, and I'm glad to see that there is at least some progress on that front. I think I like to be realistic about what I'm asking for in my activism, because you
Yeah.
got to be realistic with what's going to happen and what's going to change. I know that women are not going to give up being with men because they like men, but what we can ask for is to have higher standards. Don't be with men who are going to control you financially. Don't be with men who won't respect you, who won't find other ways to have intercourse that don't involve you getting pregnant. Have some self respect and some self confidence and be able to maintain these boundaries against these men, because in the end, even if they are supporters, even if they are allies, I don't trust male allies in feminism like that.
No, never, never, never. Mm-mm.
I'm
Nope,
glad
that
that there
never
are
works
some
out.
who make the effort, but it's just very hard to. I mean, I've heard so many stories of men who are good and then all of a sudden something changes and they change. It's just, how do you unlearn a society that puts you as the number one priority in every woman's life you interact with? I don't think you can really unlearn that way of thinking. You can try your best in the same way that women can try our best to unlearn the patriarchy in our own lives, but that doesn't mean it's ever going to be fully gone.
No, and I am, I admit, kind of um, come around to, I'm kind of a biological essentialist. I think it's what they are. I think they like it. I think just like homosexuality, we see rape across the animal kingdom, right? And so that's kind of their thing. It's what they like to do. They like to run roughshod over. It's, if you have a rooster, you have to have 8 or 10 hens because otherwise they're going to rape them to death. So there's some realities of males, and inevitably, when a man comes into a feminist space, all the women, due to our socialization, that you can fight all your life, like you just said, if you're a man and you're trying to, but they're going to look to the man, they're going to highlight him. We see this in the trans cult debate all of the time, where the men speaking up about it, the Matt Walshes or the Graham Linhams, all of a sudden they have all the spotlight and the attention, and oh, it is the problem. Well, some of us have been out here for decades screaming and you're not listening because it's just, women, who cares? And so I think men suck all the air out of a room, especially in the feminist space. But I think they do it because it's what they are, not because of their socialization. I think that can lead us on a path of like a mother blaming thing where, well, I'm going to raise my sons to be, feminists and progressive. Well, what are you saying about all the other mothers then when you say that? Did they all fail to do that? Or is it just what they are?
So, from a psychology perspective, like I said, I'm going to school for psychology. I love the field so much.
Cool. Yeah.
And everything is kind of, it's a mix of genetics and society. And the thing is, even with, like,
Hmm.
for example, somebody was arguing in my comment section about how sexuality is genetic. This is them arguing about how asexuality was somehow related to being gay, which is a whole other debate.
Oh my God.
But we
Wow.
don't
Nice.
really, you can't decisively point to a gene and be like, this is the gene that says why men are more aggressive, or this is the gene that says why people turn out gay. We can't ever, we don't have the scientific progress to the point to be able to point to specific things and say this is the exact reason why people turn out this way. All we can do is look at a history of men and women throughout history of how behaviors were, and you can see that patriarchy has been around pretty much as long as civilization has been around, and genes haven't really changed all that much in that time period. So it's just wondering how much of it really is social and how much of it really is genetic. I don't think we're ever going to know a decisive answer, just because I don't think we're ever going to have the science for it. Even if we did, I don't think that's an answer that you want to get out. But
Well,
you,
exactly. Who's running the science? Who's giving out the grants? Who's deciding what studies get funded?
and when it comes down to it, I mean, what do you do with that answer? If the answer is yes, it's genetic, men are more predisposed to violence, which it does kind of seem like they are in some aspects, especially with how like 97% of violent crime are committed by men. Then
Hmm.
what? Where do you go from there?
We stopped making so many of them. They're dangerous. We stopped making so many. I'm an antinatalist anyway, so I would never bring a girl into this hellhole. I always say I love my children too much to have them, but I certainly would not bring in someone who could hurt a woman or a girl as bad as men do. There's no way I would be able to live with myself doing that. So that's just my personal solution, but I think making less of them. I think the way that the populations have gone, there's been so much female infanticide and starvation and privation and um, taking away from every bit of energy and resources that a female could use up, that we really need to tip the scales back in the other direction.
And I like to be optimistic to an extent. I'd like to hope that there is a way to reform the way the world is, but it's also just like hell, we can't even have a cohesive movement of feminism with just women. We can't even agree on anything there. I mean, we're having the same debates we have had back since the 80s and 90s. I mean, someone says, "I think separatism is a good idea," and other women come in and say, "How dare you imply that I have to give up men in my life?" And it's a whole argument that's like, we're still here, we're still fighting this.
We've gone backwards, right? I mean, I marched for choice in the 80s and 90s, but now we can't even decide who needs the abortion. Is it a man or a woman? Yeah, I mean, I think we're going way back. Yeah, yeah, we're a divided house, and we cannot stand.
Especially with how language is an important part of anything. It's how we communicate, it's how we find common ground, and we absolutely need to have common language to describe common experiences. And I kind of feel
Yeah.
like we that's been taken away from us, and that knocked down the movement by a lot, because now we can't even say who's oppressing who. We can't even say what the problem is. I mean, that's especially with being a homosexual. It's just, at least back in the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s, you could say this is homophobia, this is a thing that exists. And now
Yeah.
today it's, you can't even say that. You can't even say I'm oppressed by men as a woman. You can't admit to that out
Hmm.
loud.
Yeah, yeah, or you'll be canceled. Yeah. Yeah, it's a sad state. I was on Twitter between my usual bans. I got reinstated again. And I was watching a gal from the woke, oh, I'm sorry to use that word, but I don't know what other word to use, side of the house, who had gone along with the cult. And she had done something wrong in the pronoun game. And
Oh,
the
Jamila
pile
Al
on,
Jamil?
yes, you know about this. And the pile on that she got, and it's like, there is no amount of bending over and taking it and subjugating yourself that's enough for this cult. Don't you understand? So I don't know. Maybe some eyes were opened by that, but you know,
I
I'm a
feel like
Gemini.
every time you expect like eyes to open, it doesn't. I was reading
Hmm.
this book the other day called The Every, and basically the premise is there is a organization, basically like if Amazon and Google merge and make one company, they control the entire world. This one woman wants to try to change that. And so she keeps trying to push ideas that should make everyone protest. This idea should be outrageous enough for everyone to say, stop, this is stupid. But every time she presses this forward with this outrageous idea, they just accept it. No one
Hmm.
actually protests, or they're so afraid of being called out that they just go with it. She says, well, having pets is oppressive because we're oppressing animals. And instead of someone saying, no, that's stupid, if we all get rid of our pets, they'll be put in shelters and die, the world
Right.
goes with it. And that's the
Oh
same
my
kind of
God.
thing that we see now, where it's like, you see this where it's like, I think that if it's really such an issue for you that you want to be called by certain pronouns, putting it in your name is a good idea, because I don't know how everyone else uses social media, but I look at the thing on my dashboard, on my in my profile, whatever, and then I scroll. I'm not going deep and researching each person that I look at. Like I'm just gonna react to the thing that's in front of me and keep going. If it's that big of an issue, then put it in your profile. I don't think what you said was wrong. That was a very catery thing to do anyway, and yet somehow that wasn't the right answer. She wasn't even saying
Oh
I'm
my
not going to
God.
respect you. She just said make it easier for people to figure this out.
Right, right, right. And to me, I really appreciate when people put their pronouns in their bio and animate avatars because then I know who to block. It makes it quick. You've been lost to the cult. Like any cult, until somebody's out of it, they're dangerous.
It's honestly draining to try and cater to that audience too. That's something that like because especially being on the younger side of things, I feel like it's hard to even get a foot in the door and hold conversations with people because the minute you say anything that's like a trigger word, they shut down. It's like you say the word
Hmm.
oppression or you say male or female or homosexual, anything, any just regular words, they shut down and won't listen to you. And then you're not even
Yeah.
having a conversation. They're just screaming the catchphrases and the slogans at you because they don't actually have arguments. It's just they know that if they listen to you, they might change their mind. And changing your mind means you might get bullied and ostracized and basically hung.
Right. And lose every one of your friends. And I was listening to a psychologist talking about this today, and he was saying that it sometimes it's better not to like give them something to push against basically because they're going to then do exactly what you say, like shut down and say, oh, to me, I'll just block them and uh refuse to engage, and that way eventually they're surrounded by just their hug box and they can see or not see what that's doing to their life, to their body, to everything. But you can't save. I was telling Heike Jane this the other day in another context, but I trained to be a lifeguard about a million years ago. And one of the things they told you was if you're trying to save somebody, they are going to probably try and take you down with them because they're panicking. And you might have to punch them in the face to get them to like snap to and stop fighting you so you can save their life. And it's kind of that. Like, life is just going to have to punch these people in the face, and there's nothing we can do for them until they decide that it's enough. And that's where the detrans come in, right? They're all out there doing their work, and I appreciate them. I'm sorry that what happened to them happened, but that's not a battle we can fight. And also, I really don't like talking to kids on the internet. I always tell them to go talk to their parents, go show their parents what they just put online. But yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing is that I also feel like, especially with, for example, with mental illness, with depression, to an
Yeah.
extent, you have to want to get better to make progress in your life. You have to want
Yeah.
to progress in order to make that leap. Because,
Mhm.
like I said, I'm in the psychology field. I've battled with depression, which I've dealt with all that stuff. I've dealt with mental illness with many people, and you have to decide this is enough. I want to make change in order to actually get better, in order to see beyond where you're currently at. You can't force
Exactly.
people to take changes they don't want to take.
Exactly. Or in AA, they'll say some people have to hit their bottom, whatever that is. Yeah. Mhm.
And that's something that I think we are seeing more of with the rising rates of detransitioners. I just feel
Yeah.
so bad reading over these testimonials, reading over their experiences, because these are people who had problems that were solvable without surgery. And yet they
Yes.
fell into this way of thinking that says this will fix it. This is the cure all, which first off is a red flag to begin with. There is never an easy cure for being
Yeah.
unhappy.
Right. Right.
And so, they go through it, and then it's like a sunk cost. Okay, the hormones didn't work, so I got to try top surgery. Top surgery didn't work, I got to do bottom surgery. And I have to do facial feminization. Now I don't realize it's not the right answer, but now it's too late to an extent. You've gone through all of this change and lots of debt, a lot of people end up just completely ill from it. And when they're done, the community spits them out. You go against the grain, you say, hey guys, maybe you should think about it. Maybe you should take a lesson from my experience, and they get completely blocked. It's very much like
Yeah.
being in a cult.
It is. That's why I always call it a cult. And I understand that on Reddit, which is where a lot of this discourse is taking place, right? That if you discuss the adverse effects of the various quote unquote treatments, that they'll block you because they don't, I mean, the cult doesn't want people to know what the risks are. So aside from the gals that are out there telling their stories, where do people find out? Like, hey, this could be horrific for me. We met, my wife and I, at the Ohio Lesbian Festival many years ago. We met a whole camp of, I call them the Detrans girls, and I had followed a lot of them on Tumblr, so I kind of knew who they were, and it was just sweet to meet them. But they thought and had been told that the lesbians would not accept them and would hate them. And that's obviously not true. And I want them to know that no, you always belonged with us. The trans exclusionary radical feminists, that's a lie. We never excluded you ever. But we wish that you would stop because it's tearing all of us apart.
It's something that you really see, especially with butch women. I feel like they're
Hmm.
going extinct. They're
Oh yeah.
everywhere. All of them are transing over, and I don't mean this in like a I don't mean this in like a selfish like, oh no, there's no one in my dating pool way, but it's just kind of it's just kind of sad because when I was younger, I do remember seeing more butch women out. Like I'm in Atlanta. This is a pretty gay city. I've seen
Oh yeah.
gay women all the time, and now you don't see as many of them. And so women
Hmm.
who are gender nonconforming don't have anyone else to look up to. Like being a teenager, I had a teacher who was like the chemistry teacher. She was in charge of the Gay Straight Alliance, and she was butch. She wore like button down shirts and jeans every day and short hair. And that was someone to look forward to see, hey, I could be like you. I could grow up and be happy and not have to follow the specific life plan that everyone else says I have to follow. And
Yeah.
all those women are gone now. And then you have all these younger girls, like hell, my generation are all transing over. And so the girls that are beneath us, the girls who are like actual children, they're looking up and they see nothing. They see
Oh
my
God.
choice is either to conform or become a boy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, my wife has said that many times that if it had been around, if the cult had been around when she was growing up, she probably would have been trans for sure. Because it's a, conservative Latino family, and that's, you're not allowed to be a lesbian. And I think the homosexuality hatred is at the root of so much of it, and the butch girls are already struggling with that so much. Yeah. Yeah, they'll have nothing.
I really do think that people are so blind to it too, the blatant homophobia. Because at the very least, I grew up in the deep south. I'm still in the deep south. I understand what homophobia is. At least when I was growing up, it was straightforward. It was just a straightforward, we don't like you, we think you're weird and predatory and a creep. And at least that was something straightforward to battle against. At least you could have people who could see that and say this is wrong and it exists. And now it's way more insidious. It's
Oh
harder to
yeah.
point out.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, the left have found a way to combine misogyny and homophobia into the perfect, mechanism for males to just get away with anything.
Now, one thing that I was interested in is a couple weeks ago, I ended up speaking with a woman who was one of the not founders, but one of the planners of Mitchfest. And I never got a chance to go, obviously, one of the
Oh,
joys of
sorry.
being on the younger side of things. But
Yeah.
um, what was going to like lesbian and women's festivals like?
Oh God. Well, you should speak to Consuelo about that because she went to Mishfest for many, many, I want to say like she's probably been like 15 times. And I only got to go twice before it got shut down. But for me, it was just okay. When you would go there, your shoulders would drop. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think we realize how much we're always tensed up because there's males around and there's all this crap around that we have to worry about. And when you would get there, you could feel your shoulders drop. Um, and one of the things that was funny to me was when I would come home and I'd go to like the grocery store, all of the people, like all the men, if I'd see them from, oh, that's just some butch lady. And I couldn't see men for a little while. It was fucking wonderful. Like every man I'd see, oh, that's just some butch across the parking lot. No, but you would walk at night in the woods by yourself without a flashlight in complete darkness, and you had nothing to worry about at all. Nothing, not a thing. it was just so peaceful. And the workshop, I was a workshop junkie. Like, I was in my whole day would be scheduled around how many workshops can I get to? Because the speakers they had were just these amazing women, um, learning about radical feminism and racism coming into that, and just everything. I mean, if you want to do archery or whatever, but it was just the most healing, amazing space out in the ferns, and the music. Oh my God. And the comedians were hysterical. And this was before, the last one I went to was the last one, 2015. Uh, and the trans cult had really come in hard. And so that kind of sucked because there was like a schism that you could see at the end. And that's why I say Consuelo was there before any of that happened. But there would be the woke types, again, apologies for the word, but walking around, and they had some males with them, and you could clock them, obviously always a mile away, and it kind of, I felt like it really messed with the energy. Like if you'd be at a concert and then you'd look up and there's a fucking man dancing around in a miniskirt as if he's not doing what he's doing. But it used to be the best place on earth, and I miss it so much. And I wish Lisa well. She did her work. She did 40 years. That's enough. I understand why she quit, but yeah, it was wonderful.
It's interesting that it ended the same year that gay marriage became legalized.
Yeah, isn't that funny? The night that happened, I was on a blind date. Didn't go so well, thankfully. But we were at the Out Bar in Ann Arbor, where the gals were. What was it? Oh, I forget. Obergefell, where the Obergefell gals were celebrating, and that whole bar was just crazy. There was people dancing all in the plaza and all around the streets. It was just it was the funnest night. It was so, because it just felt like all this possibility opened up and that things were really going to be okay. So that probably took away a little bit of the sting of losing Mishfest, but, but, and as far as the LGB, at that point, to me, if we've got adoption rights and we've got marriage rights, we're good. Do you know what I mean? I don't equal healthcare, and when I say healthcare, I don't mean cutting off organs. Um, we didn't need anything else, and so those orgs would have just died out from, we don't have any other requests really. So I think that's when the T, really started ramping up, because any organization is going to try and maintain itself through any means necessary. And if it takes a perverted billionaire named Pritzker to make that happen, then fine. But now those orgs have completely turned on us and don't obviously represent us anymore. And they're just there for men. So yeah, it was a crazy year, 2015.
It's interesting because you aren't the first person that I've heard that has said that. It's I'm hearing a real common stream of experiences with the women that I've been talking to, especially about that period. Like after you got gay marriage, then what? What's the next big flashy thing to go for? And the battle wasn't over. We still have plenty of stigma across the states, even in that like nice little period, 2015 to like 2018, before things really kicked off. We didn't really have acceptance and tolerance everywhere. It was still centered in specific places around the states. We never reached that, end goal of utopia or whatever.
Well, you know what? I have to differ with you on this, in that I don't care. If people don't want to bake me a wedding cake, cool. I'll go somewhere else. If people don't like how I live, fine. Don't change your mind. I don't care. But they couldn't legally stop us. Do you know what I mean? From doing that. And if people want to, I just don't care. Let people live how they want to live. And I think this pushing that the way we live needs to be just as accepted as the straights. I mean, to me, it's obvious in how happy we are, and I think people might come around to that eventually. Versus how happy most het couples are, which is to say, not so much in my from what I can see. So I don't care how people feel about me. I don't care if they hate me because I'm a dyke. Good, fine. Doesn't affect me. I'm still married to my wife.
I'm jealous you have a wife. You managed to make it there.
Yeah, I am extremely lucky that she agreed to marry me. It's a constant marvel to me. But don't give up hope because we're not down yet. We're not down yet. And you're so young anyway. It's too early. We didn't get married till we were 50, you know, 50. Then I felt like, okay, now I'm ready to settle down.
Well, for me, it's just I living in the South. It's there's never been obviously because I'm younger. I still do want the approval of the people around me to an extent. I can lie and say that I don't, and I can get over the fact that I'll never get it. But it's still something that you do kind of want. You do kind of want to not be the person who stands out all the time. And being that I'm biracial and I have diabetes and I stand out in a lot of ways, and
Right.
having homosexuality be one of those things, it wasn't the easiest thing to balance. It'd be nice if
Of
just
course.
some of that was just considered background noise. And to be fair, I think you're right. I don't think it really matters if people agree and approve. My biggest issue is that you can't even find other people in your own community. I don't need the whole world to approve of me or to be supportive. I just like to find my one little space where I can talk freely and openly and meet people and, you know, be myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't have that. Every time I think we've met a real cool gal in the neighborhood, we can, have drinks and hang out in the garden with. And it turns out that she's in the cult, or her daughter's in the cult, or she wants to be considered progressive, and so then we're persona non grata, and it's hurtful. But it's kind of now that I'm thinking of it, it's kind of like a nice little filter for people that aren't going to be not so much useful, but just helpful to have around as we're heading into what we're all heading into, which is a harder life for a while. Um, and so it kind of skims off, the chaff right at the beginning. And I understand the loneliness, and I feel you on that. And I'm, like I say, if I didn't have my wife, I don't know what I would do, because all my friends are spread around the world, and there's very few people that we can speak to frankly in person anymore. So yeah, it's got to be hard for you.
It's just one of those common experiences that I've really noticed with these interviews. Is a lot of other people saying the same thing of, and
Yeah.
these are women up to like 30 in their 30s even who are just saying like, you can't find people in person. We don't have our own spaces. We
No.
don't have the lesbian bars or the just places to hang out. And on one hand, I think that we do have a duty to rebuild them for ourselves, but it's kind of hard to do when at every turn someone's trying to call you bigoted or tear you down or sue you for
Or
saying I
nail
want a
a rat
space for
to your
myself.
door. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or punch you out, or threaten you, or yeah,
And
absolutely.
even if you're not even going for a lesbian space, even if you just want like a space for
Hmm.
women, because to be
Yeah.
honest, I'd be happy with just having a space where I could talk to other women and make friends there.
Right.
That even
Right.
that's an issue.
Yep. It is. They want us to have nothing, and that's why I'm hoping that women are starting to, like I say, I'm an optimist, but women are starting to kind of wake up and smell the coffee. Like, hey, this isn't going to go away unless we start saying no en masse, and it can be ugly. And I think, and you know what, when you say you're still worried about what people think about you because of youth, I think that's a true thing. When you turn 50, along with the like cloak of invisibility that you get, which just allows you to get away with all manner of whatever, there's this whole low bullshit threshold thing that you get, and then not caring about what other people think about you. And it's a gift. So maybe I think your generation is a lot wiser and a lot faster to grow up in a lot of ways. So maybe it'll come a lot sooner for you all. And that does make it easier to bear.
One thing I will say is that I am glad for the internet's a curse and a blessing, but I have been able to
Yeah.
connect with so many women across this, not even just the states, but like the world at large, who have also woken up to this, and it helps to an extent. It's nice to know that you're not the only person seeing the elephant in the room.
Yes.
But it just sometimes I wish we had there's this novel by the same woman who wrote The Yellow Wallpaper called Herland, where it's like this
Oh,
little
yes!
yeah.
Shirley Givens Perkins. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great book.
And like there's this little women's only civilization in the middle of the jungle, and I kind of wish we had that our own little space where we could just all be in one space.
They never look okay, that book though, the issue that I have with it, I'm more of a salonist, right? Like more of a like, let's tear some shit up. And they're so dignified in that book that I would never fit in. But other than that, love it. Yeah. Yeah. They were very serious women. But yeah, that's what that would be the dream, right?
It'd just be awesome to be able to have just a little town, a little space of our own
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about going out late at night. You don't have to worry about all these little things. You can just go.
There are villages in Kenya, right, where they've done this. The rest of the world isn't so
Yes.
far behind. Yeah, they've moved on to a post meal existence, and I applaud them for it. And when can I get an invitation?
I really loved learning about that, and I remember I think they had a fundraiser a couple months ago. I sent
Oh,
some money their way, and it was one of the things I remember reading in the comment section was like, "Are they inclusive of trans women?" No, they don't. They're living in a space where they're still facing like the thing about living in the West is that we tend to believe that the rest of the world is like what we have. And so many people don't, they're like, we're done with feminism. We don't need to worry about women's safety or women's rights because we live in a
hmm,
society that's perfect and fine. And it's like, no, a good portion of the world still faces femicide and just mass rape and all these issues. Even like hell, Ukraine is facing mass rape and that's getting
exactly.
basically
I was just
no
gonna
news
say,
coverage. It doesn't
like,
matter if it's like
absolutely. They never
the
give that
states are
tool up.
still having femicide. Like we're still having these issues. We're just pretending they're not there, and then to pretend that the rest
Right.
of the world is just at the same level as us, and therefore feminism isn't needed. We need to impress our Western ideals on these other civilizations, and the sheer racism and pretending that
Yes.
third world countries are and these populations are incapable of understanding what sex-based oppression is. That's one of the most annoying things to me. I assure you that the women in Africa who have made these separatist villages, that Letitia Kai, women from the Ivory Coast, they know what sex-based oppression is because they face it every day in a real physical way, in a way that Western women can often ignore if they choose to, especially when they decide to go for liberal feminism and stick their head in the dirt.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I'll just say, like, you can stick your head in that dirt, little ostrich gals, but as Jamila, is that her name, found out, there's never enough. There's never enough burying your head you can do that. They won't come for you. It will not keep you safe. Neither will transing yourself. Neither of those will keep you safe. The only safety you can hope for is the power of sisterhood to gather together with your sisters. That's all. That's it. That's all we have.
That's something that always gets me is that like when is it going to be enough to wake up people on a mass level? I feel like there are certain topics that did work, like the sports thing with
Yes.
like the swimming and whatnot. That woke up
Mhm.
people. That tended to be something. For the Vancouver rape shelter, that was something. But like so many people are still willing to keep their head in the dirt. They'd rather not. They'd rather just ignore it that it exists at all.
When I started to realize that the males in female prisons thing wasn't going to be enough to do it for every person, in this country and in all the other Canada's and Australia's and all these other places. When I found out that that wasn't going to be enough, that broke my heart. Again, you're always getting your heart broken, but that just broke me because to me, the idea of being a woman locked in a cell with a male who's also, of course, a perverted rapist because most of them are, is it's unfathomable. And I guess these women think that it's never going to happen to them. But I assure you, we are, we're just the lucky ones so far. You never know when the tide's going to turn and when something's going to happen to you. And there you are, stealing formula for your baby, and the next thing you know, there's a male raped in your cell with you. We're not. We're all the same. And I don't know when women are going to realize it. That broke me, that one.
None of us are free until all of us are free, and our shackles may be
Thank you.
different, but they have to be
Thank
broken,
you.
all of us.
That's the quote. Thank you.
And for
I
me,
lose
it's
the ability to
specifically
speak.
for me specifically, like I chose to work in a rape shelter specifically because sexual violence is so prevalent everywhere. I've never met a single woman who hasn't had some sort of sexual harassment or sexual violence happen to them. And it can be small and it can
Mhm,
be big, but everyone's had something. And
mhm.
it's just one of those things that really hit me is with the Vancouver shelter where they tried to shut it down. Like it astounds me because I working at a shelter now, I think I've been working there since February, and I've had one male victim come in, and he wasn't even a victim. His mother, he was disabled, and his mother was a little overzealous of making sure he was okay, which perfectly
Oh,
fine. But I've never actually served a male who came in for those services. It's always been women at the hands of men, and
of course.
particularly young girls. And God, my first couple cases were horrible. Like working with children, you think in your head that it won't happen. This is something that's preventable. I can, if I just dress a certain way, if I do certain
Mm,
rules. But the truth of it is that we lie to ourselves with that. We lie and pretend that if we just follow these specific rules, if we do these things, we'll be different than the other women. The other women are not like us. They did this somehow to them. They had some agency in their own assault, so that makes us feel better about the fact that we don't have any agency.
yeah, the Aunt Lydias of the world, trying to deal with their own terror by just saying, "Oh, if she'd only done this," or she needs to just marry one man, and then it'll be okay. No, 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 no. There's no way out. It doesn't matter how rich and famous a woman is. It can still happen to her. We see it every day.
Oh god, with like the Kim Kardashian thing. I
Yeah.
don't like I don't like the Kardashians, obviously. They do very problematic things. They're pushing a very bad beauty standard. But people making fun of Kim for being stalked by her ex, that you're seeing in real time what could easily end up being a murder case.
Yep. And she's a billionaire or whatever, right? Like you would think she'd be untouchable, but no woman is ever untouchable because it's men. Yeah. Yeah.
Even
Actually, I
rich
didn't
and
know. I
famous
feel guilty
women,
now.
even like rich and famous women, their power only is borrowed power. It comes from being willing to play by men's rules in the game of life.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm. But it still won't protect you. It still won't protect you. And the
Of
do it to
course
her,
not.
not to me will only get you so far.
Especially with I remember I don't remember if it was Kim or if it was another Kardashian. I'm not very up to date with any celebrities. I just know that one of them had a break in and they were like robbers held them at gunpoint and she was afraid of being raped. And people were making
Oh my
fun of that
God.
in the same way that they were
Oh,
making fun of Kanye West doing all these over the top things. Like that, these are stalker behaviors, these are stalker tendencies. This is dangerous behavior that you're making light of because you don't like the woman. And
yes.
it's kind of reflected with a lot of the arguments about um, Roe v. Wade. Oh, rich white women will always be able to get abortions. No, they
Mm.
won't.
No, they won't.
Them being
Mm-mm.
rich or white or whatever does not absolve them of being female. You can be
They're gonna
oppressed
stop you at the
by
border.
certain things. Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yes, people have certain things that might be a little bit easier for them, but you're still, even if you're not oppressed on an axis of wealth or race, you're still oppressed on the fact of being a woman.
Yeah. Yep. Sex matters. Yep.
And that's probably one of my most annoying things is that people are denying that sex exists, that people have a biological, that male and female are two things that are real. How did we get to this point? We make fun of people who are like the earth is round, but it's you guys are still out here arguing that there's no such thing as men and women.
It's there's a really old Ursula Le Guin short story, The Lathe of Heaven, where all reality and meaning kind of breaks down. And I kind of feel like we're in that, where just everything's just crumbling before our eyes. And I don't know. And I wonder sometimes if some of it isn't too, I know that there's big money involved and I understand why. Because then you've got your lifelong medical patients, and what rich guy doesn't like woman hating and homophobia, right? That's all perfectly understandable. But I think part of it is also so we specifically who kind of pay attention to things don't notice the other things going around, um, the biosphere degradation and all the other signs of what I would say collapse that's going around us. It's like, are we really gonna have to fight about this right now when we're trying to get local farming going? This is insane. There's so many other things that women need to be concentrating on, and it's another parasitic male function of stealing our energy for this basic fucking fight that we shouldn't even have to be fighting at the worst possible time.
I mean, the world really is going through it right now. Just the sheer amount of problems we're facing. And
Hmm.
it's so stupid that we're stuck arguing over basic semantics. And I'd love to say that like language doesn't matter, that we could just leave this fight alone. But there's already proof of how language does matter, and like the changes in law that have happened because of the um, transgender rights activists, the idea of gender ideology of stereotypes mean, or if you line up the correct stereotypes, that's what your gender is. Like that, all that stuff has gone into effect in law and has real life
Yep.
effect. And so we can't just ignore it and move on to other things. We have to fight this stupid fight because if we don't, who is?
Yeah, and it's also there is in America at least, I'm not sure about other countries, but there is such a huge stripe of anti-science lunacy in America. And for the left, who claims to be the party of science and reality, to be promulgating these lies, it undermines people's ability to trust anything they see in the media, anything a fucking scientist tells them. They won't trust it anymore. And who can blame them? When the Lancet is posting articles that, people can change their sex, and that's what the president and the Supreme Court and everybody else is saying. We have to hold the line on this. If we don't have this, we have nothing. If we can't use words to communicate with each other, we're back to, the savannah. We're back to the beginning, throwing bones at a fucking, just nothing. We have nothing.
It's really a lack of media literacy. Like we've lost the ability to have critical thinking and media literacy. And it's really interesting to look at. Like I'd say the worst of it happened in the past 10 years. And I've been terminally online since I was a kid. Although I feel like I use that term loosely because for me, I still have a life outside of the internet. Kids that are like 12
Yeah.
and under do not, which is
Yeah.
depressing. But looking at it, it's like people will watch a movie and only get like the basic level of storytelling. They won't be able to look deeper into it and tell what the story was meant to tell them. And people can't read articles and use critical thinking and go, huh, this makes sense, or huh, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and we don't teach that in I know some of the European countries teach critical thinking in school. And to be honest, when I was in school, we would have to bring in newspaper articles and critique them and go through and, we'd have to do all that critical thinking. And I wonder if they didn't take it out on purpose. And so now I sound like a conspiracy theorist because we have completely lost the ability as a society. You pick your side and that's your side and you don't question any of it.
It's really interesting because I was visiting a friend in Boston the other day, and one of her mom's friends was an older lesbian from the Mitch Fest days, and she was completely unaware of all the genderism stuff. And we're trying to explain it, and I'm like, I feel like we sound like conspiracy theorists trying to
What?
explain this in a concise way. But I promise you, this is all real things, and I have proof.
Mhm. I know I sound like a raving lunatic when I'm talking to people, but it's like, do you want me to send you a couple pictures? Do you want me to send you I send a lot of people to Karen's channel. You're kidding, right? Because she's been reading what they've been saying in their own words, and it, it's uh, it, it's unbelievable. And I often sound, I'm sure, like a ranting lunatic because it can't be that bad. Oh no, it is that bad. It is that bad.
And it's like, where do you even start? Because there's just so much
Yeah.
to cover.
Yes, right. I say, sometimes I'll ask them like, okay, so are you interested in like imprisoned, incarcerated people or like sports or like spaces for women, like try and get like pick an angle and not mutilating children. Like, what's your hook?
Yeah, honestly, it's just depressing to have to. We're not even continuing the fight that our mothers and grandmothers started with feminism, or even with like lesbianism, with lesbian activism. We can't even continue those fights. We're having to restart from scratch, maybe even
Yep.
less than scratch, because at least in the beginning you could admit that these were things that were real problems, and now we're just down to gaslighting and infighting, and it's very frustrating. But I mean, what else is there to do besides continue to fight? If you stop fighting, you don't go anywhere.
Yeah, I think we have to fight. I think there's no we don't have a choice. They literally have women backed into a corner. We're fighting for it's existential. But that does mean that we're on dead ground, and that's not a good place to put your army. If you if you want to fight somebody who's on dead ground, it's not a good idea to put them there because we have nothing left to lose. A lot of us, and they'll have to kill me to get me to stop talking about it, or ban me from every social.
Yeah, one thing I just can't. I don't have the patience for Twitter. I don't have the patience to play the games, so I don't even bother with that. But eventually, I feel like the channel will get big enough that it'll get some actual attention, and then they'll come after me. But
Of
even
course.
then, this
Yep.
is.
Yep. Mhm.
I mean, what are we supposed to do?
Mhm.
This is something that's important, and there's
Yeah.
never been nothing worth doing has ever been easy.
Yeah. And it's so important. Oh God, and I don't know how much you're into this whole world of, but Kiwi Farms has been taken down again by the cult, specifically a person who I will not name because I'm not trying to get your channel hit, but it's been banned thanks to this trans cult person, and it's
The
a
one
real
that
loss
was giving
because
kids hormones, right?
yes, the bathtub hormone person. Yes, exactly. That's who I'm talking about. So the thing is, their latest move, it's basically going to break the back of the internet. And that means that we are in full 1984 territory and they can come for anyone whose views they don't like. There's a lot of stuff on that place that I never looked at, but if you needed to go to show people what, that guy in Canada who keeps calling the firefighters to come to his house and pull him out of the bathtub naked, what he was up to, I'm trying not to name names, then,
The
then
funny thing
that's
is,
where
I'm
you
getting
would
your
go.
references. It's so funny.
Yeah, you know who I mean.
These infamous people.
But I mean, that was the place to go. And if you wanted to prove to people, no, they are cutting up children like this, that's where you would go. And we can't talk about what they're doing. And to me, that was like, and there's a lot of people on there that were anti-gay and anti-lesbian. Didn't care. It didn't hurt my feelings. I don't care. And that's exactly what I'm saying. To go back is like, let all speech come. But because that was a place that we could prove that what we were saying was true. And they've made sure to take it down now. We'll see if it comes back or not again. But it's a great loss, and I'm very worried about what that means for the internet. I at, when the internet did start, it was a wild west. It was at the beginning. There was Napster. There were wonderful things. It was amazing. Everybody could say whatever they wanted, and now it is a series of corporate gardens. And now it will only be a series of very large corporate gardens and nothing else.
It definitely lost the individuality. There was a closeness to it in the early days. I remember being on like certain like small sites that were like there was maybe 10 or 13 people who were on there, and you knew all of them because you were all interested in this very niche thing. And you could talk
Hmm.
openly. And I admit there are certain things that should be looked into. Like if someone's going online and talking about hurting children, then yes, pay attention and use that to put them in jail. But I don't
Of
believe in
course.
censoring free speech
Right.
because the minute that you say it's okay to censor things that you disagree with, then disagreement becomes illegal in a sense. You can't even criticize anything. You can't, and
Well,
criticism is an important part to moving forward. You have to criticize our culture in order to improve it.
to the cult, disagreeing is literal violence.
They really
Yeah.
do position language as being violence, which is the funniest thing to
Hmm.
me. Yes, me calling you a man is literal violence. Yes, that's physically harming you. That's definitely
Right.
how it works. But when you send rape threats my way, that's not violence at all. That's just justice. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And Twitter is so bad with that, right? You can't even report someone on the basis of misogynist, rapey comments. You have to do it via gender. They force you into their little world. Yeah. Yep.
Well, we're about the hour mark. I do not want to keep you on all day. I'd feel bad taking up all your time. But thank you so much for speaking with me. I love speaking with older lesbians. I'm always just like, oh my God, you're happy and you have a wife. That's what I want to do one day.
I know, I'll never shut up about her either. Sorry. But thank you so much for asking me. I'm truly so flattered that anyone under 40 wants to hear anything I have to say. Thanks for calling.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we leave off?
You know, I guess get comfortable being uncomfortable because what's coming isn't going to be fun. Get yourself out there and start growing food and getting local with your as local as we can with our peoples. Look after yourself first, and um, thanks to my crew who I'm constantly in contact with, like 24/7 online. Without you all, I would be not happy like I am today. So that's it.
Hey, I think that's a great message to send.